Well, if you're just joining us, we've been discussing this evening the looming tariffs that were announced by the US President Donald Trump, confirming in a letter last night to President Cyril Ramaphosa that from the 1st of August, South African products headed into the US market will face a levy of 30%. And he's warned, by the way.
It started with a quiet trade review in Washington, a technical reassessment of tariff reciprocity hidden among pages of policy language. But within days, it triggered a geopolitical shockwave across an entire hemisphere. And now, the fallout is threatening a farming community once publicly embraced by the President of the United States. South Africa's white farmers, once invited by Donald Trump to resettle in America, are now facing the economic consequences of a tariff war they never saw coming. On July 8th, the news broke like a thunderclap. The United States government announced it would impose a 30% tariff on key agricultural imports from South Africa, effective August 1st. The move came as part of a sweeping campaign to recalibrate trade balances worldwide. But the message it sent could not have been clearer. Friendship and praise do not protect you when the tariff axe falls. YouTube is not the biggest fan of content like this, but we believe people deserve to hear the truth. If you agree, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us beat the algorithm and keep going. We really appreciate the support. The tariffs directly target citrus, wine, soybeans, grapes, nuts, and other farm exports, many of which come from the Western Cape, where white-owned farms still dominate export production. South Africa is the world's second largest citrus exporter. Nearly $100 million in citrus alone are shipped to the United States each year. And now, with a 30% penalty slapped on those products, profitability has evaporated overnight.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has pushed back against US President Donald Trump's imposition of a 30% tariff.
For many of the affected farmers, this is not just a setback, it is an existential crisis. One Western Cape farmer, Christian Mouton, said he felt completely blindsided. "It does not make sense to us," he said. "To welcome South African farmers to America and then turn around and punish them here, it feels like a contradiction." He is not alone in that sentiment. For decades, South African agriculture has relied on access to high-income markets like the United States. Under the African Growth and Opportunity Act, known as AGOA, South African goods had largely entered American markets duty-free. That access is now collapsing. The irony here is not lost on observers. In 2018, Donald Trump publicly accused the South African government of land seizures targeting white farmers. His comments, made on social media and echoed by some US officials, painted white South African farmers as victims in need of rescue. The narrative was so prominent that Trump's administration even floated the idea of offering special immigration protections to Afrikaner farmers. Now, in 2025, those very farmers are being hit with trade penalties that threaten their livelihoods. But this is not just about South Africa. The White House did not isolate its retaliation. Alongside the 30% tariffs on South Africa, Washington also announced new penalties on at least 13 other countries, including Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, and Brazil. In some cases, the tariffs are even steeper: 40% for Vietnam, 50% for Brazil's copper exports.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said Brazil will be charged with a 50% tariff on products sent to the U.S. starting August 1st.
The global scope of this trade escalation is unlike anything the world has seen in modern memory. Still, the South African case stands out, not just for its emotional resonance, but for its potential to reshape long-standing alliances. President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa issued a stern rebuke, calling the tariffs disproportionate and unnecessary. His administration pointed out that more than 70% of American exports to South Africa already face zero tariffs. The average South African import duty is just 7%. By contrast, Washington's new 30% tariff appears, to many, punitive and economically destabilizing. Yet the most intense reaction came not from politicians, but from the ground level, from the farmers themselves. For decades, farms in the Western and Northern Cape have been built around export cycles that rely on the Northern Hemisphere's off-season. When Americans are not growing citrus, South Africans are. That arrangement kept grocery shelves stocked and farming communities alive. Now, with 30% tariffs choking off market access, farmers will be forced to redirect exports to lower-paying markets. Prices will fall. Some crops may go unsold. Jobs will vanish. The Citrus Growers Association of South Africa issued a statement warning that the tariffs will wreak havoc on entire communities. They say the impact could ripple far beyond the farms, affecting rural employment, logistics firms, and even port operations. In a country where unemployment already hovers above 30%, this is not a manageable challenge. It is a national emergency. Opposition politicians in South Africa were quick to respond as well. The Democratic Alliance Party described the tariffs as a devastating blow to South African agriculture and accused the ruling party of failing to secure the country's trade interests. Party leader John Steenhuisen, who also serves as the country's agriculture minister, said he believes there is still time to negotiate a solution. Only 4 to 6% of our farm exports go to the United States, he explained, but they are concentrated in the crops most vulnerable to collapse. He warned that without a diplomatic breakthrough, farmers would suffer irreparable damage. Behind the scenes, South African negotiators are scrambling. Talks with the U.S. Trade Representative's office are ongoing. A revised trade proposal is reportedly in the works. Officials believe there is still a narrow window before August 1st to avert or modify the tariff terms. But with each passing day, that window is closing. Meanwhile, in the United States, the message from the administration is firm. Tariffs will only be lifted if foreign governments agree to full trade reciprocity. According to White House officials, too many countries have been benefiting from American market access without offering similar treatment in return. President Trump, who returned to office on a wave of economic nationalism, has made reciprocal tariffs a cornerstone of his trade policy. In some cases, the penalties appear symbolic. In others, they are brutally specific. In the case of South Africa, critics say the tariffs disproportionately hurt the very sector Trump once claimed to support. This has sparked confusion and criticism even among conservative commentators. How can you champion white South African farmers in speeches, they ask, and then impose trade penalties that wipe out their businesses? But the Trump administration argues this is not personal. It is about numbers. Officials point to trade data showing South Africa maintains higher effective tariffs on American goods. They claim that unless South Africa agrees to lower its average duties, these new penalties will remain. That is not just rhetoric. In the same July announcement, the White House issued tariff hikes on 14 countries, with rates ranging from 20 to 50%.
Monday, the president sent letters to 14 nations, unilaterally putting those tariffs into effect on August 1st.
Japan and South Korea were hit with 25% tariffs. The Philippines received 20%. Algeria, Iraq, Sri Lanka, and Libya were slapped with 30% penalties. Brazil's copper exports were hit with a staggering 50% tariff.
The formula was a formula based on common sense, based on deficits, based on how we've been treated.
What we are witnessing is the reassertion of U.S. tariff dominance across multiple continents. For investors and corporations, the timing could not be worse. Multinational companies are already facing high inflation, slowing consumer demand, and geopolitical instability. Now, they must contend with a global trade war that shows no sign of cooling. In Brussels, U.S. and European Union negotiators have been holding emergency meetings to stave off a similar tariff dispute. Sources close to the talks say an agreement is within reach. But as of today, no deal has been finalized. European car makers, in particular, are worried about being dragged into the next wave of tariffs. Back in South Africa, the mood is darkening. Farmers are facing an impossible decision: keep exporting at a loss or abandon U.S. markets altogether. Some are already laying off workers. Others are uprooting orchards that took decades to cultivate. One farmer, speaking anonymously, said, "This is not just a business problem. This is a life problem. Our children were supposed to inherit this land. Now we are not sure if we will make it to the next season." To make matters worse, alternative markets are not easy to find. China, once a promising buyer, has flooded with domestic supply. Europe is dealing with its own regulatory constraints. That leaves many South African farmers with nowhere to turn. And while the 30% tariff does not technically ban their goods, the economics make it nearly impossible to compete. This is the underbelly of trade policy. For every macroeconomic chart, there are human consequences. Decisions made in Washington echo in small towns halfway across the world. In this case, the echo is not rhetorical. It is agricultural. It is freight loads left on the dock. It is workers told not to come back. It is families being told their farm is no longer viable. South African officials remain hopeful. They believe the United States will reconsider before August 1st. But in the current political climate, hope may not be enough. The administration has shown no signs of backing down. And with multiple trade fights opening simultaneously, Washington's bandwidth for negotiation is shrinking. So where does this leave South Africa's farmers? In a precarious place. Praised one year, punished the next. Held up as a symbol of resilience, then targeted in a crossfire of tariff retaliation. What is clear is that the economic future of many farming communities will be decided not in their fields, but in trade offices thousands of miles away. This is not just a South African story. This is a global signal. If even the countries praised by Washington are not safe from trade penalties, then no one is. The world has entered a new phase of economic confrontation, where loyalty, history, and personal relationships are no longer shields. Only leverage matters, and that is the part no one wants to say out loud.